One rash promise, one moment of pride, and one man's voice for truth is silenced forever. How John the Baptist lost his head is the subject of our 40th installment. We're exploring Mark chapter 6, verses 21 through 29. Look at verse 21 from the English Standard Version of the Bible. But an opportunity came when Herod, on his birthday, gave a banquet for his nobles and military commanders and the leading men of Galilee. An opportunity for what? In our previous video, we saw that John the Baptist was imprisoned by Herod Antipas for telling him that his marriage to his sister-in-law was illegitimate and immoral. Herod's wife wanted John eliminated, but because Herod knew John was right, he kept putting off her demands. Now Mark tells us that Herod's birthday party presents an opportunity. Look at verses 22 and 23. For when Herodias' daughter came in and danced, she pleased Herod and his guests. And the king said to the girl, "Ask me for whatever you wish, and I will give it to you." And he vowed to her, "Whatever you ask me, I will give you, up to half of my kingdom." Who is the dancer? Herodias' daughter, not Herod's. Herod married his half-brother's wife, and this girl is presumably Herod Antipas's stepdaughter and niece. She was apparently an amazing dancer, because Herod and the important people at the party were so impressed that Herod made a startling offer to the girl. "Ask me for whatever you wish, and I will give it to you, up to half of my kingdom." Herod Antipas is a tetrarch, meaning a ruler of a fourth of his father's former kingdom. Now, he's prepared to surrender half of that fourth in appreciation of a dance. Not to be sexist, but this sounds like peak male impulsiveness. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let's move on to verse 24. And she went out and said to her mother, "For what should I ask?" And she said, "The head of John the Baptist." Herodias' daughter has received a once-in-a-lifetime offer. It's an opportunity with generational implications, so before answering, she asks for her mother's input. Back to verse 21, here's the opportunity Herodias has been waiting for. She told her daughter to ask for the head of John the Baptist. That would put an end to his criticism of her marriage. On to verse 25. And she came in immediately with haste to the king and asked, saying, "I want you to give me at once the head of John the Baptist on a platter." Look at the dynamic in the verse. She came back into the room immediately and with haste. And she said, "I want you to give me at once the head of John the Baptist on a platter." Herod had been dragging his feet about John, and Herodias was sick of it. So when Herodias' daughter presents her request, it is urgent. Quickly, quickly, I want his head, and I want it now. She understands that if Herod hesitates, in front of this room full of important people, he'll look like a man who doesn't honor his word. Do you think he should honor his word in light of this monstrous request? Look at verses 26 through 28. And the king was exceedingly sorry, but because of his oaths and his guests, he did not want to break his word to her. And immediately the king sent an executioner with orders to bring John's head. He went and beheaded him in the prison and brought his head on a platter and gave it to the girl, and the girl gave it to her mother. Mark tells us that Herod was exceedingly sorry. He knew this was a horrible request, but because of his guests, or more accurately, because of his fear of looking bad in front of his guests, he sent an executioner to John's jail cell. When did he do it? Immediately. If you've been following this series, you know that immediately is one of Mark's favorite words. The girls said, "Quickly bring me the head of my mother's critic," and immediately John the Baptist, prophet and front-runner for the Messiah, was silenced. Herod Antipas, ruler of Galilee and Perea, was overruled by his ego, his weakness, and the manipulation of Herodias. Look at verse 29. When his disciples heard of it, they came and took his body and laid it in a tomb. John's disciples recovered his body and laid it in a tomb, but Herodias had his head. What a horrible story! Herod knew that John the Baptist was a righteous and holy man, with correct criticisms of his marriage. But his hasty promise and his concern for his image in front of important people caused him to silence John the Baptist, rather than rebuke his stepdaughter's heinous request. What are some takeaways from this story for us? First, be careful making promises. Don't let your mouth write checks that the rest of you will have to pay off later. Second, not every promise should be honored. The right and righteous thing to do would have been to tell the dancing girl, "What you're asking for is monstrous, and I would be a monster if I gave it to you." And finally, ego and pride are poison to the character. There is no right way to do the wrong thing, even if you think you have to do so to satisfy your onlookers. Let me know what you take away from this passage in the comments. In our next video, Jesus is sufficient to feed a multitude of thousands. Thank you for watching So What Scripture. Please subscribe to the channel and share this video.